quite a while, in the Ventura River, and it's up at the Wheeler Gorge campground. Let's see if I can get this to transfer directly or correctly, I should say. All right, can you guys see I'm not sure which screen. Oh, let's see. Which screen are you guys seeing right now?
I see your presentation.
Without like the slide notes?
Oh, I guess on the right corner it says no notes, so I guess maybe I can see your note.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to swap those.
I think go to display settings maybe. And yeah, there you go.
Perfect.
Looks great.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. So yes, as I said, I've been working on this project for almost a couple decades. And I'm going to go over the project a little bit from kind of how it started off, how we went through the design, permitting, and now we're literally in the implementation phase. And as you can see from these photographs here on the cover slide that I put together, this is just earlier this year, one of the barriers that was located within the campground. This was last month, the contractor in the middle of breaking up the barrier, and then a couple weeks later, the creek has now been restored to free flowing. So I'll give a little bit of background of how we were able to do that. So quick outline, I'll talk a little bit briefly about our organization, South Coast Habitat Restoration. I'll give a brief overview of some other fish passage projects that we've been involved with in the region. I'll talk primarily about the Wheeler Gorge project and a little bit about future projects that we're involved with in the area as well. So South Coast Habitat Restoration, we're a nonprofit organization that works to protect, conserve, and restore the various habitats and native biodiversity of the Santa Barbara Ventura region. I founded the organization, and we are fiscally sponsored by Earth Island Institute. We've been around for 19 years, and we're happy to do the work that we're doing because we get to do a lot of really cool stuff, such as performing habitat assessments. We do landowner outreach. We apply for and manage grants from various partners, state, federal, and local funding. We coordinate various consultants on projects. We help obtain permits for that work. We bring on general contractors and oversee their work. We monitor the permit conditions, as well as do community outreach and education. So a quick kind of overview of where we've done work in the area. So this is kind of the Santa Barbara Ventura region. The Wheeler project is located here. And in my career, we've done a number of projects that have opened up a lot of habitat for steelhead trout, including Carpinteria, which is where we started a lot of our work. We've done a project in the Mission Creek watershed. We're in the process of doing a number of projects in the Maria Ignacio watershed in the Goleta area by the airport. We've also done work along the Gaviota coast, where we've done a number of barrier removal efforts along the Tahigas Creek watershed. And most recently, we did a project over in Santa Anita Creek over on Hollister Ranch. A few years ago, we did a couple projects over in the Davy Brown Munch Creek watersheds within the Los Padres National Forest, located up here, which are tributaries to the Santa Maria River. Back in 2010, we also did a project in Lion Creek in the Ventura River watershed. That was a really fun project working with Mary Bergen, who's a local in the area, and she was very supportive of the project, and we were able to work with her to remove a barrier and install a clear spanning bridge. Moving on to the Wheeler Gorge project, the goal of the project is to improve upstream access along North Fork Matilaha and Bear Creeks for the endangered steelhead trout by removing 4 barriers to migration and building 2 vehicular bridges at the Wheeler Gorge campground in the Ventura River watershed. We're partnering with the Los Padres National Forest since it's their land. And the project is being funded by a number of different funders over the years, including the Wildlife Conservation Board, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, as well as locally Patagonia. And the project has an approximate cost of about $5.5 million. The project has been led by and coordinated by various consultants, including Waterways Consulting as a civil engineer, Streeter Group, who performed the structural engineering, Earth Systems, who's been doing the geotechnical engineering on the project, and Catalyst Environmental, who helped us when we were able to bring them on board to help with the NEPA coordination for the project. Without them, we would not have been able to get the project started and moving to the point where it is right now. We've also been having the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians as a tribal monitor out there. And the bridge is manufactured by Contact. And the contractors for the project include Time and Construction, as well as California Conservation Corps. And I should have added, I apologize, the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, which I did add their logo here. Sorry, so I apologize. But this is all the different partners that we've worked with on the project. Lots of folks working together to make this project happen. And really, on this slide, I just want to highlight, that this is a very collaborative effort. The Forest Service has been tremendous as a partner working with us with all the review of the project designs, assisting with the permitting. As I mentioned, Catalyst Environmental, again, they did all the baseline studies for the NEPA documents to go forward. All the different engineers that are out there. Waterways Consulting is a firm we've worked with a lot over the years. They've been out there weekly as the construction has been moving forward, as well as Earth Systems doing all the special inspections for the project. And we're just really happy that the project's moving forward and we're able to get this moving along. So what have we been doing and where? So I guess the where first. I'm assuming most of you know the watershed, but here on the left, we've got the Ventura River Watershed outlined. The project is located on North Fork Matilahaw Creek and Bear Creek. For reference, Matilahaw Dam is located right over in this area. Here's a small photograph of that. That again shows the tremendous dam and project that hopefully is moving forward here soon. I'll end with a slide on that. Zooming in on the project site. The project is located, again, within the Wheeler Gorge campground. For those of you who've not been to the campground, it's a very popular campground. It's one that I've had a chance to camp at as well. It's really, really pretty. The North Fork Matilahaw Creek and Bear Creek have their confluence within the campground. There were 4 creek crossings located within the campground. And as part of the project, the lower 2 crossings located on North Fork and Bear Creek are planned for removal. And then the upper one on Bear Creek and the upper one on North Fork were planned for removal and replacement with the clear span bridge. Go to the next slide here to get kind of an overview here. As I mentioned, this map is slightly oriented differently, but the lower 2 barriers are down here. So we call these Site 1 and Site 2. Again, these are scheduled or were designed to be removed completely. Site 3, the upper location along Bear Creek, was to be removed and replaced with the clear span bridge. And Site 4 on North Fork Matilahaw Creek is again also slated to be removed and replaced with the clear span bridge. As part of the project, working with the Forest Service, the removal of these lower 2 crossings, for those of you who have been here, required and will be requiring a change in the circulation pattern within the campground. So campers will now be driving into the campground off Highway 33 and making a right-hand turn and a left-hand turn in order to gain access to the west side of the campground and the campsites out there to be able to access the upper bridge. That'll be forthcoming with more details later. Quick overview on the engineering. As I mentioned, Waterways Consulting. I've got a couple images here. The top one shows the plan view of sites 1 and 2 and the proposed removal of the barriers within these locations that are highlighted in this kind of goldish color with some log structures placed. The lower image shows a profile view of site 1. This gray area was the barrier that was there, and you can see as part of the design, it was to remove and lower the creek elevation and have a roughly 15% slope upstream of where the barrier was. For representation of the bridges, I'm showing site 4 here, the upper North Fork bridge location. This is where the old creek crossing was. It will be replaced and a new clear span bridge with concrete abutments and wing walls will be installed at this location. And I'll show photos of that in a second. The profile of that, the new bridge approach is coming up to the new bridge elevation. The bridges will pass a 100-year storm, plus have 2 feet of freeboard in order to have and maintain safety out there. And this is the profile for that area as well, with the gray showing the existing condition elevation of the creek crossing and the new proposed bridge elevation at this with this rectangle here in the air. So on to the exciting stuff, the photographs. I kind of gave it away a little bit with the cover photo, but again, this is site 1 looking upstream. This barrier was the critical barrier that blocked migration at this location. This is also where critical habitat designation by NOAA has been listed as ending. And so as part of this project, now that these barriers are gone, we're going to be working with the Department of Fish and Wildlife in order to see if we can get a change to that so critical habitat designation can continue upstream of these locations. Again, site 1, a little from the side view. And then, as I mentioned with the previous photo, the in progress, the work going in with the contractor demolishing the concrete, and a couple after photographs. Sorry for the perspective on this with the shadows, but the barrier is now gone, as you can tell here in this photograph. And then looking upstream, the barrier is completely removed. We've got one of the new logs that was placed here within the stream channel, and really excited that that is now a free-flowing creek. The barriers were built in 1977, 1978, so it's been many years that the creek has been blocked by these structures. Moving over to site 2, a couple before photographs from a couple of different vantage points. This is looking upstream on the right, and on the left looking from the side. The concrete was pretty easy to remove. The contractor removed that in a couple days, and then moved on to regrading the stream channel. So here we are looking across the creek. The creek is going to be flowing from left to right in this photograph. Creek is dry at this time, so it was easy to implement the project at this location without having to do any dewatering. So that made it really, really simple for that to be implemented. Moving on to site 3. This is the location where one of the bridges is going to be installed. So this is a before photograph looking flow is flowing from right to left in this photograph. And this is looking upstream. Creek is also dry at this location. And first thing the contractor did was demo the crossing and then started excavating the holes for the new bridge abutments. These are the forms being placed where the rebar would be placed into, and then ultimately concrete going in there. There's a photograph from the other abutment side with concrete already poured, and then the vertical rebars going in for the wing walls. Here's the contractor's crew putting in the forms for the wing walls prior to concrete installation.
Oh, this is Lynn.
Hey, Lynn, we can hear your call.
Yes. Yeah, 10:57. I'll try and Lynn, you're not muted, but I'll try and mute you.
Thank you. This is the wing walls and the rock slope protection, which is an engineering term for basically really large boulders being placed to protect the concrete structure. These voids were all filled in with smaller size rock and gravel and dirt in order to create a packed, sealed area. And then that rock was then placed up to an additional height, as kind of shown in this photograph with the opposite abutment. So the bridge will sit at this elevation on this kind of little shelf and span the creek. It's going to be a 70-foot long bridge spanning the creek there. And I'm happy to say that the bridge pieces arrived on Monday this week. This is the contractor unloading the beams. The beams will be installed in the next couple weeks with a metal deck that goes on top of it, upon which a concrete deck gets poured on top of that in order to have a concrete deck that integrates into the concrete railings that will be placed as part of the project as well. So that'll be happening over the next few weeks. Moving on to site 4, the last site for reference. This is looking slightly upstream and looking across. This is the location where the new bridge is going to go. And just to kind of ease of time here, similar to the other site at site 3, contractor basically excavated a large hole, poured the foundation, and here the contractor's getting ready to put the concrete poured in for the wing walls to go in here on the river right wing walls. And this is with the form stripped off of the wing walls, and you're essentially looking in the orientation of where the creek will flow. This black pipe is taking the current flow through it in order to dewater the work area, and the excavator is parked where the creek will be flowing. And like I said, in hopefully a month or so, we'll have the new bridge connecting these two wing walls, and we'll be able to have the contractor remove the dewatering system in order to have the creek flow again. So this is an example of what the bridges will look like. This is up by Davy Brown Creek. I mentioned that in one of the earlier slides. We partnered with the Forest Service, did similar work in that region where we opened up habitat for steelhead trout. And the bridges will look essentially like this. So this is kind of a little sneak preview for what things will look like out at the Wheeler Gorge project in a couple months. I just wanted to include that for context. And we're nearing the end of the presentation here, but all the bare areas as part of the project, we are working with the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, and we contracted them to grow plants for us. So we're really excited that we're partnering with them. Here's a list of species that they were able to collect from the project site, and we were able to secure a permit from the Forest Service to allow us to have them collect seed and grow plants for us. And here's a few representative examples of some of the plants that they're growing, with some horsetail, some mule fat, and some little oaks growing down here too. So we're excited that we're going to get OVLC back out to do some planting sometime before the end of the year. We don't have an exact date. We're going to try to maybe coordinate, if possible, a volunteer planting day out there. And so if you're interested, please reach out. We'll see if we can coordinate some activity to get the public out there to help us out with that. And speaking of the public and supporting us out there, nearing the end of the presentation here, but I'm really excited to share with everybody that a few weeks ago, we received a notification from Patagonia that South Coast Habitat Restoration has been selected as the beneficiary of this year's 29th annual Patagonia Salmon Run, which is a 5K fun run that runs up and down the Ventura River. If you're interested in supporting our organization, please come out, have some fun, get some exercise, join us. We'll be tabling, as well as a lot of other nonprofit partners table at this event. It's my favorite tabling event that I've been doing for many, many years. The QR code on the right here, well, if you can scan that, it will take you to the registration page. This logo is the logo from last year's Salmon Run. I hadn't gotten the new logo yet, so I don't think it'll be that one, but I wanted to include that as part of it too. So yeah, please come out and join us on Sunday, November 16th. I think it starts early in the morning, around 8 or 8:30. So it's a fun day to get out and enjoy some river time. Lastly, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody. Thanks for the invitation and opportunity to share a little bit about some of the work we've been doing at the Ventura River. And I wanted to include this photo from 2011 that I took. This is me looking a little bit younger with one of my old staff, Aaron Markey, who is now the manager for the City Creeks Division in Santa Barbara, along with a couple colleagues from CDFW. This is Don Baldwin on the right, and Ed Pert, who was the regional director for many years. He's now retired, and we're standing at the dam. And this is before the scissors were painted on here. So I think it's kind of neat that I've got this photo before that happened from being out there. And I brought this up and include this as kind of a closing comment and just comment to share with this group. I know you guys have all been talking about the Matilaha Dam, and I'm really excited about the work that we've been working with the Forest Service and the partnership that we've been able to pull together to bring fish passage restoration to the watershed. And our colleagues at the Forest Service, and I really want to highlight a couple of folks right now. Christy Close, who's the fisheries biologist at the Forest Service, has been championing this project with us for many, many years now. And without her efforts in keeping the Forest Service team together and moving forward, we wouldn't be where we are either. So a big thank you to Christy. And then most recently, the new Ojai Ranger District manager, Marshall Alford. He has been an incredible asset to our project. And that type of collaboration is something that I feel like is extremely important. And, I have not been personally involved with the removal of the Matilaha Dam, but since we've been working on this project, a lot of people have been asking me, well, what's going on with the dam? And I give them some brief updates on what's going on. And I've shared a couple kind of stories about the dam and how it's been talked about for many years. And as I was pulling this photo together, looking through my old on my server of different photographs, I found again this photo. And as I was kind of zooming into it, like my eyes were like kind of focusing on this area, and I was like, "What's going on here?" So what that says is just notch it, um, and I kind of like smile at that because many years ago, somebody had shared with me, this is before I even knew that the dam had been notched at one point. And I think if we follow a good plan and pathway, we can get there. And doing fish passage, steelhead restoration takes a lot. It's very challenging, it's very expensive, but I think the outcome is well worth it. And with that, I just wanted to say, thank you very much. And hopefully we can continue the momentum of doing some restoration in the Ventura River, and be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. That was a really great piece of, a project to share. We have some quick questions. One that I had really quickly, just a clarification, was this like the first or one of the first fish passage barrier removal projects in the Ventura River?
Um, to my knowledge, well, no, we
Okay.
were involved with the project on Lion Creek, as I mentioned earlier,
Got
with
it.
Mary
Yeah.
Bergen.
Thank you.
That's a tributary to San Antonio Creek.
Yeah.
So we did that project in 2010, I believe it was. So that's
Mhm.
the first one that we were involved with, Ventura
Got
River.
it.
As far as other efforts, I know the city of Ventura has done a little bit of work with a couple of efforts in the Foster Park area, but I'm not very intimately involved with them. Not sure
Great.
if others might be on the call.
Yeah. And then are there plans to clear barriers like on La Cañada area or San Antonio?
I'm gonna stop sharing, by the way, real quick, just to
That was a
chat.
great photo.
I do not know the answer to that question. But I know that as part of the Matilaha Dam removal, there are other efforts going on. I think the immediate road crossing downstream of the dam has been one that's been talked about. But I know there are efforts by other entities that are trying to look at other barriers as well.
Totally. Yeah, great. Thanks. Those are a few questions in the chat. Um, and okay, we are a little bit pinched for time. So I say for now, if you have any other questions or would like to be in contact with this organization, um, please reach out or reach out directly to Mo. But yeah,
Great.
do you have any last minute questions? I like that you joined like your video, but I just wanted to check.
All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see everybody at the salmon run.
Yeah. Um, thank you so much. And now we'll have the Ventura Water speak on a couple projects that they have going on.
Thanks, Lauren, and thanks for squeezing us in. Yeah, we just wanted to, yeah, sorry. My screen. We just wanted to have a few minutes to talk about some projects that we're working on. Some water supply projects that have been in the works for quite a few years that are nearing either completion or construction beginning, and so we wanted to provide that update. Some of these projects have been funded through IRWM grant efforts coordinated with this group, so we just wanted to give that update for watershed. All right, I see.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we're happy to have you on the agenda. Um, and it's good to have you because we're not going to have, as regular of a general meeting coming up in December. So thanks for being here.
You.
That looks great.
Are you seeing the regular presentation?
Yes, this
Okay.
this looks great.
Okay, great. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just introduce myself real quick. Jennifer Trebo, the Assistant General Manager for Water Resources for Ventura Water at the City of Ventura. Like I said, I just want to give a quick, we have overview of our city water supplies and the challenges, a summary and status of the projects under development, including the State Water Interconnection Project, our Ventura Water Pier Program, and the East to West Interconnection Project. And then just a quick overview of our rate adjustments that we're making right now to fund these projects moving forward. City of Ventura has multiple water supplies sources. Ones affecting this group primarily are the Ventura River, and we get purchase water from Lake Casitas. We also have water from 3 groundwater basins, including the Oxnard Plain. All over the past decades, these supplies have faced challenges from drought, regulations, and legal challenges that we've needed to look into how we can augment and diversify our water supply portfolio in order to still provide reliable water to our community during these challenges. So over time, our water demands have decreased, and the way that we have utilized the water in the Ventura River watershed has changed over time. We used to have greater reliance on, you can see the light blue and the turquoise bars are Lake Casitas and Ventura River, and those used to make up more than 50% of our water supply. Back in 2000, our overall demands have decreased, and also reliance on those water supplies have decreased. Especially during the drought, we had a greater reliance on groundwater. And so that has, over time, the city has looked into alternative supplies and been working on planning and designing those projects. So there's 3 major projects, the State Water Interconnection Project, the Ventura Water Pier Program, and the East to West Interconnection Project that I'm going to go over really quickly. So first, the State Water Interconnection Project. So this is a regional project between the City of Ventura, United Water Conservation District, and Calleguas Municipal Water District. And the City of Ventura has had an allocation to the State Water Project since the 70s, and we have not been able to connect to that. We've leased our allocation to other parties throughout that time period, but we've never really been able to receive water from that project. So this pipeline, which is a 7-mile pipeline connection to Calleguas' system, would allow us to receive our State Water Project allocation through Calleguas' system, but also through Metropolitan Water District. So the water would come into Metropolitan, we would wheel it through their system that would come to Calleguas, and then through this new pipeline, the water would come to the City of Ventura. And that will be primarily used to improve our water quality, to blend with our groundwater, to lower our total dissolved solids. It also helps us reduce reliance on Ventura River and Lake Casitas, that normally we would use those water supplies for blending, and when those surface water supplies are low, then we can use the State Water Project water instead. It also provides an emergency connection both to us and to Calleguas. So one of the main reasons we're able to do this project now is because Calleguas had an interest in the project as well, and we're cost sharing the project with them. So that's what makes it feasible for us. So just a quick project status. Our design is 100% complete. We are preparing big documents now and just waiting on some easement acquisition issues and some grant coordination with federal agencies to get those bid documents out probably in October, November. And then we're planning to start construction sometime in 2026 with an estimated project completion of the summer of 2028. So just a quick, the estimated construction costs on that pipeline is about 40 million. We'll have a better estimate after we do our construction bids. We've got quite a bit, almost $11 million in grant funding from state and federal agencies. Like I mentioned, we had Prop 1 Round 2 IRWM funding through this group, 2.5 million. We had a grant through EPA for 2.8, and then we have Bureau of Reclamation for 5 million and a small HUD grant for 500,000. And then I mentioned before that we've leased our state water project allocation to other parties. A few years ago, we entered into an agreement with San Gorgonio Water Agency that allows us to do a long-term lease with them. And so during the planning and construction phases of this project, they've been receiving our whatever state water project allocation is granted each year. They've received 100% of that, and they've paid us our fixed costs that we pay annually to DWR for maintaining our allocation. And then once the project is complete, they'll still receive, we're planning on taking between 1,300 and 2,000 acre feet per year just for those water quality blending. And they'll be still paying us about half of our fixed charges through that period, as when allocations are higher, they'll receive the remainder of our allocation. So that's been a great partnership, help us to save costs on that project. Our next project has been in the works for over a decade, the Ventura Water Pure Program. The main impetus for this project was a litigation on the Santa Clara River and a consent decree that requires us to divert our wastewater discharge from the Santa Clara River estuary. We also, at that time, were planning to need new water supplies. And so the nexus was that we could do a project that would allow us to meet the regulatory requirements for diversion and also increase our water supply. We also there's also additional regulations on reclaimed water usage and putting that diverted water to beneficial use. So that further made the water supply project the top choice. And so this project will augment local water supply, provide drought and disaster resilient water supply, protect the ecological resources of the river. It will improve our water supply quality as well. So we'll have pure water to blend into our system. And then it helps us, and it maintains, it meets the consent decree, but also maintains our NPDES permits regulatory compliance. So just a quick overview, there's several components of the project. You have in the bottom left the sort of Ventura Water Reclamation Facility. That's where the wastewater is being treated and currently discharged. We have constructed the ocean outfall, which is temporarily will temporarily be receiving the discharge from the plant. Once the advanced water purification facility is constructed, that water will flow into the water purification facility and then be injected into the Oxnard Plain Basin and then extracted with our current Oxnard Plain wells, and then sent to our existing conditioning facility, and then distributed through our service area. So like I said, the outfall is complete. The water purification facility is in design. This is just a graphic on the process that the water will go through at the plant and the wastewater plant and the advanced water purification facility. Our current cost estimate is $200 million. Construction is hoping to begin 2026-27 and completed in 2030. And this will add in the first phase about 3,000 acre feet of water to our system. And then our final project I want to talk about it's just kind of a boring pipeline project, but it does, because our water supplies have been developed from west to east, as the city has developed, we have a limited capacity to move water created on the east side to the west side. And so that has created a reliance on the Ventura River Watershed for part of our city, even when those supplies are limited. And so with this project allows us to move groundwater that's produced on the more on the east end, as well as these new water supplies I just discussed, First State Water Project and Ventura Water Pure Water. Both of those supplies are coming in more towards the east end of the city. And so this project allows us to move not only existing water supplies, but new water supplies more efficiently throughout our system. So it's got two phases. This mid to west phase was recently completed in January, and then we're just about to start construction on this more eastern phase, the east side to midtown phase. And so, like I said, the first phase was completed in January. Construction costs about $10 million. We had another IRWM grant through this group, $2.5 million. And then our east to mid phase was awarded in June. We're looking to start construction here in the next month or so, and then with a completion date of June 2027, and that's at a cost of $11 million. So with all these projects, this is how our sort of water supplies are going to shift once these new water supplies come online. So we're shifting from this green line, which is our purchase water from Casitas, and no, the light green is a purchase water from Casitas. You see that's decreasing over time, and then our Foster Park water, we're able to reduce those supplies as necessary during drought periods. And so that's really sort of the nexus with the watershed, is that by bringing these new water supplies online, we're able to reduce our reliance on the Ventura River watershed. Sorry, no, this one had animation. So in a rate study process now that we started back in November of 2024. And in order to pay for all these projects, and so we've done the financial plan, rate design, and we're looking to adopt the rates in December. So we had going through all the projects the city is working on. I didn't discuss, we have some wastewater upgrades that are going, substantial wastewater upgrades happening as well. That the water rates are projected to go up about 10.5% per year for the next 5 years, and a little bit more increase on the wastewater side to pay for that. It's a membrane bioreactor project that we're doing there. And so the total, this just kind of roughly gives you the total impact to our ratepayers over the next 5 years. And then just our schedule. So mid-October, we're taking the rate study to City Council and asking them to authorize the rates for noticing to proceed with the 218 process. So we'll have notices going out to all of our customers of these rate increases. We'll have a 45-day period of notice, and then we'll have a public hearing in December to adopt our rates. And then those rates won't be implemented until July 1st. So that's all I had. Just thanks for giving us the time for that quick update, and I can answer questions about the projects if necessary.
Totally. Thank you so much for being here. Someone had a question in the chat. Leslie, do you want to unmute yourself, or I can read it.
Yeah, I just wondered, I know there's been some discussion about the settling ponds, which are such a wonderful habitat for so many birds, and how that will be affected by the Ventura Water Pure project and the consent decree. I know people at Audubon are concerned.
Yes, the ponds are still going to be there. I can have Sarah Mulder provide some additional details on that, but the ponds aren't going anywhere.
Oh, good. Thank you. The blue herons, thank you too.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, the city has been in communication with Audubon, particularly over the past few years, more frequently, to make sure that communication gets out a bit better. But the gist is that the discharge through the ponds, the volume per unit time is decreasing, but because they function by having to fill and spill from one pond to the next, they'll still remain full.
Cool.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Does anybody have any last minute questions? I think in the interest of time, we should go on to our next presentation. But yeah, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. It is live and people can respond, and I can also record them and follow up later. I feel like I have some questions, Jennifer, so I will, would love to follow up with you later. But thank you so much for joining us. Okay. And next we will have a presentation from Eagle Rock Analytics. I believe Coley, yes, you're here. Great, nice to see you. Feel free to introduce yourself and share whenever you're ready.
All right, let me share my screen here. Get it going. Does that look good?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. My name is Coley Roman. I am a senior climate scientist at Eagle Rock Analytics. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about some work we've been doing for the Ventura River Watershed, looking at different climate hazards. So today is really going to be an overview of some of the results from this analysis. So to give you a quick summary of what we were trying to do, we were creating quantitative metrics using the most advanced climate model output available for California in a hopes to derive climate-informed insights. So to give a little bit more background information, we were using model output from the most recent climate modeling activity from the Coupled Model Intercomparison Project Phase 6. We take that model output, we then dynamically or statistically downscale it to a 3-kilometer resolution. This just means that we're picking up a finer spatial resolution so we can actually get some good details on what's happening within the Ventura River watershed. And then we look at 137 different models, different simulations from these models to understand what might happen in the future for Ventura River watershed. And we start synthesizing that and trying to pull out different storylines of what might happen in the future. And this analysis comes together using a global warming level approach, which I will discuss in a couple of slides. For reference, the final selected climate hazards that we're going to go over today are extreme heat, drought, precipitation, wildfire, and then marine stratus. So before we dive into the results, I want to talk a little bit about a global warming level approach. So this might be new, maybe you know a little bit about it. So what we decided to do was take a global warming level approach instead of a time-based approach. This approach allows us to group climate simulations by how much global warming has occurred instead of by a specific year or time frame. So instead of asking the question, what will climate impacts in California look like in 2050, we ask the question, what will climate impacts in California look like when the world reaches 2 degrees of warming? Now, why would we complicate this and make it a little more tricky to understand? Well, there are a number of benefits to this approach. For one, it removes uncertainty from models that warm unrealistically quickly. So in the newest generation of models that were used for the IPCC 6th assessment report, there were a couple of them that have we call it the hot model problem. They warm unrealistically quickly. So this approach actually removes a lot of that uncertainty from those hot models. In addition, it allows us to use simulations from multiple shared socioeconomic pathways or scenarios. So typically in a time-based approach, you pick a time and you pick one SSSP. But because we're using this global warming level approach that's not based in time, we're actually able to use all the simulations together, and this increases our statistical robustness. In addition, this enables more flexible adaptive planning, and it also aligns with what's happening at an international level. So the IPCC uses this, as well as state climate planning processes. This is including the energy sector, which is using the global warming level approach for a number of their operation and planning requirements. So overall, global warming levels gives a clearer picture of how these impacts could evolve with continued greenhouse gas emissions. So for this analysis, we have 4 different global warming levels that we're going to use. You can see them in the table on the right. The first one represents our reference global warming level. So you're going to see a lot of figures that show all 4 global warming levels, and then a couple of figures that only show 3. Those the figures that only show 3 are actually showing a delta plot. So we'll take the future global warming level and we'll reference it to the baseline reference warming level. This allows us to show how things are going to change in the future with respect to what has already happened. So our reference historical global warming level for this analysis was 0.8. And then we have 3 future global warming levels we're going to present today that represent near-term planning, mid-century planning, and long-term planning. And those are going to be 1.5, 2.0, and 3.0. We recognize that going into the global warming level approach can be a little tricky, and especially when you're talking about planning and mitigation and things like that, having some way to anchor it back into time is really helpful. So on the far right column, you're going to see the IPCC best estimate year. That actually represents the year that the IPCC thinks that that global warming threshold will be passed or has passed already. So for the historical baseline, you can think of it as early 2000s. For near-term planning, you can think about it as 2030 time range. Mid-century is going to be 2050, and then the long-term planning, the 3.0, is going to be 2075. So I'm going to start with the results, so you don't have to go and listen through this whole presentation and not know what the end result is. So if we were going to summarize it in one sentence, the Ventura River watershed should expect a wetter, hotter future filled with more extremes. You're going to see a substantial increase in daytime and nighttime temperatures, specifically during summertime and fall. You're going to see the wintertime caution advisories for high heat increase, and you don't typically see those right now. You're going to see a similar frequency of droughts, but they're going to become more severe. Extreme single-day precipitation events are going to increase intensity, but multi-day events will actually decrease in intensity. You're going to see an increase in drier conditions that coincide with high winds, which could lead to increases in fire weather risk. And then finally, you will see a reduction in marine stratus, which means a loss of the critical modulation of heat waves and drought. So now I'm going to take you through those hazards one by one and break down the results. We have a lot of additional information, so if you have questions, please let us know. We might actually have figures that will provide that information. But why don't we just jump right in? So for extreme heat, we're going to look at max temperature, min temperature, and heat index. Before I dive in, though, I kind of want to orient you to what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of repetition here. So the first figure is going to show what is happening at each warming level. So for this specific example, it's on average, what is the daily max temperature within these different warming levels? The second figure that you'll see most of the time is going to be a delta figure. So that's the figure at the bottom. And this again is that figure I mentioned before that references that historical baseline warming level. So this really shows how the variable has changed or will change in the future with respect to what was experienced in the early 2000s. The figure shows a really broad area across Ventura and beyond. And the black outline is the outline for the actual river watershed, just to kind of orient you there. In most of the slides, you'll see on the left-hand side, I'll have a bullet point that describes the metric, so what you're actually looking at, what is coming out of the climate models. And then the second bullet point will be some sort of insight, what we're kind of interpreting the results as. In addition to that, you'll notice that I'll have things like high confidence, moderate confidence, things like that. That is our estimate of uncertainty based on looking at all the simulations that we have and trying to get a better understanding of where they're agreeing and where maybe they're not agreeing, and where we have a little bit more uncertainty. All right, now focusing on this max temperature, again, the top figure is showing you on average what maximum temperature will look like under these different warming levels. And then that bottom is the delta. And what you can clearly see is that daily max temperature is going to increase. You probably all knew this already, but it's going to increase by about 4 degrees Fahrenheit once you get to 2075. Now, you might be interested, instead of looking at what's going to happen on average, what's going to happen in the extreme. So this is showing you the 95th, kind of the extreme tail of high maximum temperatures. You can see that it ranges from about 80 to 105 degrees, so pretty hot temperatures. And that is also going to increase in the future. So we're expecting to see about a 4-degree increase overall in daily max temperature. Now we can break this down into seasons, so you can see when these changes might occur the most. So this is showing you the average daily max temperature you can expect by season, and the seasons are the different rows. And then for each global warming level, which is going column by column. So right away, you should notice the seasonality that we would expect, the cooler temperatures in winter, the warmer temperatures in summer. If you kind of look across the different warming levels, you can probably see that it looks like it's going to increase. But if I pull up that delta plot, you can see right away that yes, indeed, we're expecting an increase in temperature across all the different seasons. But what will hopefully stand out to you is that the biggest increase in temperature is actually going to happen in September, October, November. And in fall, you could probably see increases between 4 to 6 degrees by 2075. We can also take a look at minimum temperature, so how your nighttime temperature might be changing in the future. This is the same figure that I just showed you, but that minimum temperature. So on average, what you would see, you can see in wintertime, it ranges from about 30 to 40 degrees. In summertime, that minimum temperature is typically above 60. We can also look at the delta to see how it changes, and what will stand out again is that minimum temperature will increase the most during fall, very similar to what we saw with maximum temperature. But another little detail you might notice, might require looking back at these figures later on, is that the minimum temperature for summertime has a substantial increase, more so than what we saw during the maximum temperature. So what this is suggesting is that in summertime, the difference between the range of temperatures you could expect during a given day is going to get narrower and narrower. So you won't have that reprieve of nighttime temperature during summer. We can also, instead of looking at how the intensity of temperature is going to change in the future, we can look at the frequency of different thresholds. So what we have here on the top is the 25th percentile of minimum temperature. So there's those really cold nights under 0.8 degrees of warming, so the early 2000s. And you can see it ranges from the 30s to about 40 degrees. We then use that as a threshold, and we calculate how many days we'll see temperature below that under future warming. And as the second figure clearly demonstrates, that's going to decrease. And then the third figure, which shows that delta, just emphasizes that a bit more. So we have high confidence that there'll be at least 40 less days per year with temperatures below 40 degrees. So we're really shifting to a much warmer climate, both daytime and nighttime, and that the watershed should expect nighttime temperatures to be significantly warmer, and then especially during September, October, November. The last extreme heat metric that we're looking at today is heat index. Heat index takes into account humidity. So it's not just based on temperature, but humidity. And you can think about it as how the heat feels to you. Now, this is used a lot by the National Weather Service. The table that you're seeing in the upper left corner is showing you the different thresholds that the National Weather Service uses to issue different warnings for heat. So if it's between 80 and 90 degrees, they're going to issue a caution heat advisory. But heat index doesn't just impact humans, it can also impact the biodiversity within the watershed as well. So the figure over here is showing you the frequency that the National Weather Service under these different warming levels would have to issue an extreme caution. So having more substantial impact to the human body or other animals and things like that within the watershed. And you can see that as we warm in the future, we're going to see a pretty substantial increase in the number of these events, at least 20 more events per year where the National Weather Service would have to issue this warning. We can also break this down by season, and the one that I pulled out that I thought was most interesting was for winter. So this is showing you the frequency of a caution advisory in winter. So it is the lowest of the heat warnings, but they typically don't happen. So if you look at the frequency in 0.8, you can see that it's pretty low. These events happen maybe 1 or 2 times a year. They're just very rare. But when you get to 3 degrees of warming, they become more substantial. They're going to increase to about 7-8 times a year. So the watershed should expect caution advisories in winter, which we typically don't have right now, to occur more often. I perused that really fast, so I want to pause for a second and just ask if there's any questions about extreme heat.
Yeah, thank you for the pause. That it was really great information. But yeah, if anybody has anything they'd like to add, feel free to unmute yourself, take a moment. Okay.
I'll keep going.
Thank you, Polly.
Could I say something real quick?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, Leslie and then Carly for sure.
I've been actually living on the east end of Ventura, so I'm not in the Ventura River watershed as much right now, but we've had a lot of humid days here in the last 3 or 4 weeks. It seems like people have mentioned that quite often. And I'm just wondering, is that humidity something that you're paying attention to at all?
Yeah, so the heat index does take into account that humidity. So the increases that we're seeing in heat index reflect increases also in humidity. So that is definitely something that we're seeing the models suggest a future with higher humidity and higher temperatures as well, which obviously impact personal comfortability, right? We prefer more drier conditions for the most part than super humid. Carly?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I have my question is like kind of about the biodiversity effects that you mentioned. Is that something you all are also including in your analysis, or is somebody else going to be like looking at that?
That is someone else who's going to be taking these results and then doing exposure mapping and vulnerability mapping and things like that.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I don't have more information on that. Okay. Any other questions? Can't see the chat. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to drought. Now, drought is a more complex metric. There are, first of all, lots of different types of droughts that are out there. You can have long-term droughts, you can have flash droughts, things like that. And then there are a bunch of different ways to calculate drought. So it makes it really hard to kind of pick and choose what you want to do. But for this study specifically, we've decided to use the standard precipitation index. So the standard precipitation index is a drought index that just solely looks at precipitation. So it's really, is it anomalously wet or is it anomalously dry? And to start off with, it breaks it into 3 kind of bulk categories: near normal conditions, wet conditions, and dry conditions. So anything less than a -1 on this SPI scale is going to be considered dry. Anything greater than 1 is going to be considered wet. So the first thing we did was we calculated this SPI, and then we wanted to see how these categories were going to change under global warming. So at any given point in time, you're going to be in one of these 3 bulk categories. You're going to be near normal, you're going to be dry, or you're going to be wet. And if you take a look at this figure on the right, you'll notice that 0.8, that the majority of the time you're in near normal conditions, about 70% of the time. And then the wet conditions and the dry conditions are about 15 to 20% of the time you'll be in one or the other. And then as you continue to go warmer and warmer, as our climate continues to change, we start to see some really small changes. But the thing to note is that the dry conditions actually stay relatively constant. So this is suggesting to us that the frequency of droughts will actually remain relatively constant to what you're experiencing now. But what you'll also maybe notice, and we'll get a little bit more into this when we talk about precipitation, is that the wet conditions are going to increase. So it goes from about 18% of the time to a little over 24% of the time by 3.0, and that the near normal conditions are going to start to decrease. So what you're seeing is a shift from near normal to more wet conditions, but having those droughts kind of remain the same. So even though the frequency of droughts is going to remain relatively constant, what we can then do is go and look at the severity of these droughts. So within the drought category, when we have a drought, we're going to call it either mild, moderate, or severe. And we can do the same kind of breakdown. So the figure that you're looking at here on the right is showing you if you're in a drought, was that drought mild, moderate, or severe? And under a 0.8 warming level, you can see that the majority of the time, 50% of the time almost, we're having a mild drought. 30% of the time, we're typically in a moderate drought, and then a little over 20% of the time, those droughts are severe. But as you continue to warm, you're going to see that drastically shift. So by 2075, you're going to go from 20% of the time being in a severe drought to almost 40% of the time being a severe drought. So this really demonstrates to us that the frequency of these severe droughts is going to increase. So while the frequency of droughts overall will remain the same, they're going to become more severe. And if you follow kind of the National Drought Monitor, this would be like a D3, D4 extreme exceptional drought. Any questions on drought before I move on to precipitation?
I have a quick question. What is the highest level? Like if that's D3, D4, like how high does it go up?
D4.
It's D4. Okay. That's great. Yeah, any other questions?
Okay.
Oh, I have one more. You said it's going to remain relatively consistent to what we've already experienced. So does that mean like we've kind of experienced the highest level of drought?
So what I mean is the frequency that we're experiencing drought is going to stay the same,
Yeah.
but they are going to be way more severe. So
Okay.
right now we're generally experiencing mild droughts, but in the future those will turn to more severe droughts.
Thank you. And thank you, Peter.
So what's happening in the warming level 2.0? It just seems kind of interesting is that it's dipping in severe and then mild seems to increase, and then 3.0 it decreases. Like I would expect it to just decrease. But
Yeah.
what did you guys think was happening in this scenario?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the way that the warming levels work is they take a 30-year time period around that best estimate year. So 1.5 was 2030, and then 2.0 is actually 2050. And what happens is you get a lot of overlap. So the problem is we're not like the data is overlapping too much, and that there's too much model uncertainty to really make out that difference. So even though it's kind of upticking in 2.0, I don't have a lot of high confidence that that's actually upticking. What I have more confidence in is this trend from 0.8 to 3.0, where you see this shift. Oh, you're muted, Peter. Sorry.
Super helpful to just think of it in big picture and from a big picture perspective from where we are to where we're going in 2075, I think. Thank you.
2075, yeah. Laura?
Quick question follow-up on again, the pattern you're saying will remain the same, the severity will be higher. What about the maybe I missed it again, is the length of the droughts expected to change? Like the number of years? I think we typically, and I don't know if you know off the top of your head, like what the kind of typical range of years of what we would consider an kind of like more severe drought's been, but I think it's like 5 years was a recent one.
So we didn't look into the duration other than we looked at 36-month and 24-month droughts specifically, and then looked at how those shifted. And I can say the 24-month results are very similar to this. So I don't think there's actually much of a change in the duration, but we didn't look at it specifically. So I don't have a lot of confidence in that result.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to precipitation. So what we saw in the drought index, which again was the standard precipitation index, which uses precipitation, I mentioned that the near normal conditions were kind of shift into more wet conditions. So for a precipitation result, we should expect to see an increase in precipitation, and we do. So our stories are aligning, which is really great. This is showing you on average the total precipitation you can expect under the different warming levels. That's the top figure, and then the bottom figure is showing you that change. So by 2075, towards the end of the century, we can expect a 2 to 4 inch increase in the total precipitation per year. We can then, once we know that there is going to be this increase in precipitation, we might want to know when that increase is going to happen in terms of seasonality. So this is showing you, again, the average total precipitation broken down by season. So how much rain to expect in winter, spring, summer, and fall. And then again, the columns are the different warming levels. So right away, you should notice the different seasonality we have with precipitation, which you're probably all aware of. Most of the precipitation coming in winter, less of it coming in, or none of it really coming in summertime. And then those shoulder seasons get a little bit. So the question is, where is this change happening? Where is this increase in precipitation happening? And it's happening in winter. So the shoulder seasons where we do see a little bit of precipitation actually suggest a small amount of decrease or drying, but all of that increase in precipitation is really stemming in the winter months. So high confidence that this increase in total precipitation will come in winter time. So the next question that we kind of had was, if we know that there's going to be this increase in precipitation, we know that it's coming in winter time, how will the number of wet days change? So is this increase in precipitation coming from an increase in the number of days we see rain, or is this increase coming from an increase in the intensity of rain in a single day? So this figure is showing you the number of wet days per year by global warming level, and then again, the difference or the delta plot. And the one thing I want to highlight in that delta plot is it ranges from plus or minus 2. So what we take from this is that the number of days of precipitation will probably go unchanged. It will be pretty constant, maybe flexing from plus or minus 2 days, but not a substantial amount to really suggest that this change in precipitation is coming from an increase in the number of days. So to kind of confirm this idea that we're starting to see that this total precipitation, it's happening in winter, it's not going to be an increase in the number of days, but it suggests it's going to be an increase in the intensity of precipitation, we can then start looking at the intensity of precipitation. So this is showing you a very extreme precipitation amount. It's a 1 in 10 year, 1 day precipitation return value. So a 1 in 10 year event is really just an event that has a 10% chance of happening in a given year. So it's a very extreme precipitation amount. This figure is showing you how much that precipitation is under each global warming level. And you can see that this 1 day precipitation total increases with warming. Here's the delta, it just confirms that. So a 1 in 10 year, 1 day precipitation event will increase by 2 inches by 2075. So we're really seeing this 1 day precipitation intensity increase. The question again is that change in the number of days. So if we do the same type of analysis, but instead we look at a 2 day precipitation event, you can see right away that the 2 day by the end of the century is actually going to decrease in intensity. And we can take it one step further and look at a 10-day precipitation event. So what does that 1 in 10 year event look like over a 10-day total? And you can see that that also decreases. So this really suggests to us that 1 day events will get more intense, that this is coming, this change in precipitation that we can expect in the future for the Ventura watershed is going to come from an extreme single day intensity. Not one extreme single day intensity, let me rephrase that. It's going to come from single day events, not multi-day events. This is further confirmed. There was a special request for this specific figure, but it further confirms what we're kind of getting at here. It's showing the annual frequency of 3 inches of precipitation in 48 hours or 2 day total. So the top figure, again, just showing you what that looks like, the number of events, and then the bottom figure shows you that difference. But the thing that I need to highlight here is this figure is a bit deceiving on the bottom. Your range is actually half a day. So there's really no change in the frequency of 3 inches of rain in 48 hours. So again, another clue that the multi-day events are actually going to either stay the same or decrease a little bit in the future. Yes, Peter.
Okay, so you noted that a 10-year storm is going to increase by 2 inches in terms of rainfall totals for a single day.
Yeah.
How does that compare to the current 10-year storm? So for example, if we had a 10-year storm saying we get 5 inches of rainfall and now a 10-year storm is going to be 7 inches of rainfall.
Yeah.
Currently, what is 7 inches of rainfall in terms of a year storm? Do you have data like that? Because that helps us, and from a management perspective, to plan for system capacity or adapting and messaging about when flooding can become more probable.
Okay. Okay.
Does
So
that make sense?
I think so. I might have a clarifying question in a second here. So the figure that I popped up here, if you look at 0.8 on the far left, this is the value of a current, what I would call early 2000s, but current 1 in 10 year, 1 day precipitation event. So within the watershed, that's ranging, depending on where you're looking, 5 to 8 inches of rain. So this 2-inch increase is going to bring it up to 7 to 12 inches of rain total. But I think you were asking more about like annual total
Well,
precipitation.
no. So like, for example, the storm drain system is built for a 10-year storm, a
Oh.
baseline, right? And now, because the 10-year storm is actually going to be a 5-year storm, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like from a volume perspective, and so
Yeah.
we need to think about that. But I'm curious from a like precipitation from a daily volume, like how does it compare? Is it now like the 10-year storm historically is now a 5-year storm? Is it a 1-year storm? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we could kind of suss that out for you if that's something I think we might actually have maps of the 1 and 5 year storms, so we can do a quick comparison to see how they change. But just based on this 2 inches, and if we think on average the Ventura watershed, a 1 in 10 year event is 6 inches, and we're seeing an increase of 1 to 2 inches, you can kind of you can give the fraction, right? Like 1/6, 2/6, so a third of an increase or something like that. But we could plot this in relative if that would be helpful. So instead of saying 2 inches, it would say like a 20% increase, or is it helpful to reference it back to like a 1 in 5 year event?
Well, I just want to know, like I said, like right now, a 10-year storm is 5 inches.
Yeah.
Right. But in the future, a 10-year storm is going to be 7 inches.
Yeah.
Right now, what is a 7-inch storm? Is that a interval? What's the interval? And I
Yeah.
think that's really helpful from for us as municipalities to understand that the volume of water that we're designing pipes for, if we need to replace them through O&M, we need to enlarge them, right? And I just think that that is important from a management perspective, from a draining and flooding.
Gotcha. So
Flood protection. Thank you.
yeah, so I think if just to confirm, I think I get it now. So this is saying that in the future you can expect 8 inches of rain for a 1 in 10 year event. You want to know what that event is now, with whether it's okay. That we can do. That's easy. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I was on here. So this is yep.
Would you rather so we have 2 more questions in the chat. One, maybe just one. Would you rather we wait till the end, or
no, I can take it now. I always minimize the chat. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's why I'm here. So Sudeep is wondering about the modeling methodology. How does the macro global modeling get localized to the Ventura region, in terms of like what local parameters inform this type of granularity?
Yeah, so we do two different types of downscaling from the global models. One is statistical. It's using a method that has been I believe created by UCLA. It is common, it's being used throughout the IPCC and things like that. So it's a pretty standard method for statistically downscaling the models. The other one is dynamical, which then takes it takes specifically the WRF model, which is a weather forecasting model, and downscales it based on that. So there's 2 different options here. I'm happy to provide references if you want to learn more about it. It's very fascinating, but a lot of details that I would not want to get into right now.
Totally. Thank you. And then maybe just a clarification, is the model suggesting fewer, less extreme flooding events in the watershed, or more, or the same?
Yeah, it's more. So there's going to be, or not, the frequency of events we saw that the number of wet days is going to stay the same. So the frequency of wet days is going to be constant, but the intensity of that is going to be more. So you're going to see more rainfall on a given day than you do now.
Great. Thank you so much.
And so the last figure for extreme precipitation is really trying to get at compound events. So we said that the multi-day events were kind of decreasing or suggesting that they're going to decrease in the future, these like 2-day totals, 5-day totals, 10-day totals. But what happens if you have 2 single events that are happening back to back? So you have one event, it makes the ground really saturated. And then a week or so later, you then have a single event where it's a 1 in 10 year event. And so what we did was we created a compound event metric, which is what you're seeing here. So this is showing you the frequency of having 3 inches of rain in 24 hours, followed by a 1 in X event within the same week. So it is saturating the ground, and then you're having another pretty high rain event within 7 days. So the x-axis here is showing you the different 1 in X's that we decided to take a look at. So a 1 in 2 year event, a 1 in 5 year event, and a 1 in 10 year event. And then the y-axis is showing you the average frequency within that warming level, and the colors are the different warming levels. So basically what you're seeing here, if you take a look at the 1 in 2 year event, that this frequency of this type of back-to-back events within a week is going to increase in the future. So you could have saturated grounds with a really extreme weather, extreme precipitation event follow. And then as you go from 1 in 2 year to 1 in 10 year events, those become more extreme. So rightfully so, we see this decrease in the frequency, but still an increase when you look at the global warming levels. So generally the watershed should expect the same number of days of precipitation, but more intense precipitation that will fall. And this could exacerbate these types of preconditioned compound events where you might have an event that saturates the ground followed by another extreme precipitation event. That is all I have on precipitation. I do want to pause again. Yes, I already see.
So that last slide I think was really interesting, is kind of helpful. And I just want to highlight that this request for looking at the back-to-back kind of storms was at the request of our advisory group. So I appreciate that you put that in there. And I think that it was kind of getting at in the last 2023 kind of storms we saw, it wasn't always, we had maybe a big rain event after a dry period. And that first rain event wasn't maybe the most damaging. It was actually sometimes the subsequent, even, smaller rain events after that came a week. So we had like rain, almost at like once a week frequency for a little while. And what I'm seeing, just to like kind of summarize what I'm hearing here, is that we won't necessarily have more, we're not going to have more rain days in the future, but we will have, likely, it looks like, rain events that happen like closer together when it does rain, and those rain events will be more intense. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was well put, actually.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Carly.
I just want to take a moment, I guess, and literally a moment, and ask people, just everyone in the group, to invite you to because I know we have a lot of anxiety and fear around floods. So I just want to, especially having gone through the Montecito experience together. So I guess I'm just asking for us to take a breath and breathe through that if anyone's experiencing that kind of PTSD or trauma responses. Thank you. Because I need to do that.
Yeah, these results are never happy, unfortunately.
So basically, in essence, CFS in the main stem of the river is going to skyrocket because there's going to be way more surface water runoff because of saturation of soils, and we're going to have really high flows in the main stem of the river, potentially more scour over time.
More more reset events, it kind of seems like too, is what we've seen in terms of habitat scouring and erosion more often, not more often, but when I'm not sure if more often is the right thing, but that there will be some of these larger reset events like we saw in the winters 2023, right?
But
Yeah, I
and
think.
one
Go
thing
ahead.
to just flag though is, and Coley, you're the expert, please chime in if you have better words to describe this, but we're looking at precipitation, and we didn't look at soil saturation patterns or any of the info behind that. So not to say that that's not necessarily true, but I don't want anyone to take away from this that we're saying, oh, our models show that that's going to happen. You can kind of interpolate that and kind of take the next step and apply what does it mean to have these types of events coming more back to back, and to have the exacerbating impact of these compound events. But again, our data and our modeling is just looking at the precipitation itself, not at like soil or retention.
Thank you for that. That's correct. Thank you. Yeah.
This is the most valuable information though from a floodplain management. Watershed Protection District probably wants to know a lot about this. Yeah, I feel like the wetted floodplain, the 100-year floodplain is going to be changing more often potentially. And that's important to realize.
Avery?
Yeah, so this is really interesting results. The 10-year increase of almost 30% in that 24-hour intensity is really astounding, and especially with the longer storms decreasing. So did you look at even shorter durations to see if that trend continues into like even higher increases for 12-hour or 6-hour storm events?
We did not. We focused, the lowest duration was a day.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to know.
Okay. Taking notes, this is good. Any other questions or comments, feedback? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everyone who, spoke in that moment. Thanks, Coley. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I recognize I'm also going probably going to go a little over time. I do apologize. I will.
Okay. Yeah, we have that's totally okay. Thanks for telling me. We have the meeting open until 12 and I think we'll do well.
Okay. So the next category is wildfire. This is a really difficult, tricky thing to assess from our climate model outputs. Wildfires are complex. They are influenced by both the built environment and the natural environment. We're obviously focusing today on this natural, what's happening with the weather itself. But it can be really hard for us to get a good understanding from what the models are showing. So what I'm trying to tell you here is all those high confidence results I had, the confidence is gonna drop a little bit in this one. So when we were thinking about wildfire, we were trying to think about what is most important, or what do we think about when we're looking at wildfire, and what came to our mind was windy, dry conditions. So essentially red flag warnings. So we started looking into the literature to try and understand what the National Weather Service does for red flag warnings. Turns out there's not a standard across the state, let alone across the country, so that there are different wind thresholds based on geography, time of year, fuel moisture, things like that. So what we decided to do was to create a couple different thresholds to test. So we created another compound event that would try to look at how many events would the National Weather Service have to issue a red flag warning in the future. And what we did was we looked at dry periods using precipitation, and then we looked at windy periods looking at wind above 15 miles per hour and above 30 miles per hour. Now the 15 and 30 represent the range that we were seeing from the National Weather Service for issuing these warnings. So that's why you're seeing that. What I'm presenting here today is just above 15 miles per hour. Happy to share the 30 mile per hour. I can tell you right now, it shows the same results. So very consistent. So what we see from this is that there is going to be an increase in the number of high fire potential days per year, and that the watershed could expect 10 or 20 more of these events per year where red flag warnings could be issued. Now, again, models don't necessarily have a lot of agreement when it comes to wind and when it comes to things like humidity. So this is a really tricky one for us to kind of wrap our heads around. So we have a little bit less confidence, a little more uncertainty, unfortunately, in these results. But generally, we are seeing drier conditions that are coinciding with higher winds, which could lead to red flag warnings and then increase the wildfire risk. Any questions on that really short wildfire section?
Maybe just a quick clarification. You said that it didn't account for humidity, and what else?
So we only accounted for, we used precipitation in this case to do dryness, and then we used winds. So we're not taking into account humidity as a dry variable, so dry, like drier days or something like that. We also didn't take into account fuel moisture or high temperatures or anything like that. It's really just focusing on precipitation and wind.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Anna?
Yeah, and just for a little bit of additional context too, that's outside of what Eagle Rock has done, but the way in which we're taking Eagle Rock data is to assess the vulnerability of our assets in our watershed, right? And I wanted to just let folks know that when scoring the vulnerabilities as they relate to wildfire as a hazard, we looked at this data that Eagle Rock presented with us, but we also too overlaid CAL FIRE wildfire severity maps and was looking at that as an additional layer of detail too, because obviously we all know it's not just the weather conditions that contribute to likelihood of wildfire, but also, you know, the vegetative cover and the fire severity zones.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay. Any other questions on the wildfire? Okay. So the last hazard that we took a look at was marine stratus. So marine stratus is complex. So to develop an easy to interpret metric, we needed to create essentially a proxy for marine stratus. So our climate models do not output marine stratus like this is a marine stratus. They do output cloud fraction, and then we did a deep dive into some literature to try and create a proxy that would say this is a marine stratus if we see it. What we found was that it's generally we generally like to use low clouds, defined as anything under 2,000 meters as something that would represent a marine stratus, and then limit the analysis to June, July, August, and September when you typically experience the marine stratus. So that was our proxy, which I'll show you in a second. But the other thing I want to mention is that marine stratus moderates heat waves and droughts. So to confirm that the proxy and kind of the larger scientifically known relationships between marine stratus and these other types of events was correct, we decided to further deep dive and look at joint distribution change signals of marine stratus with temperature and evapotranspiration. That's a long-winded way of saying that we wanted to make sure that the results were right for the right reasons, that we're seeing whatever we're seeing with marine stratus is because of the drivers and the mechanisms, and that everything aligns up. So there's a bit more of kind of like a scientific analysis than just demonstrating some metrics in the next few slides. But to start with, we'll give you that proxy. So this is showing you the mean cloudy days in June, July, August, and September across the different warming levels. So this is really how many days per year you should expect to see the marine stratus under the different warming. So if you look at that, probably hard to see any difference. So let's get you those delta plots. And right away, you can see that there's going to be a reduction in the days that marine stratus will be present. And this is in agreement with some of the observations we're starting to see come out, analyses we're seeing come out from observations over what's happened historically, and some analyses we've seen that have attempted to look at marine stratus into the future. So we're seeing this reduction in the marine stratus. We want to know, is this corresponding with what we would think it would correspond to, which is increases in temperature and decreases in or increases in drought or decreases in humidity. So this is showing you some delta signals. So again, the left is the signal I just showed you, which is that marine stratus. The right is showing you our max temperature during this period, and then, or excuse me, the middle, and then the far right is showing you how evapotranspiration is going to change in the future, and that is also going to decrease. So what we're seeing is that these fewer days of marine stratus are actually aligned with hotter temperatures and a decrease in evapotranspiration, which is what we would expect. So we're feeling pretty confident that the models are doing they're showing the signal for the correct reasons. So that's all I have today. I'm going to just throw the slide up again with the results. Again, a one-word sentence would be a wetter, hotter future filled with more extremes, seeing the increase in the daytime and nighttime temperatures, seeing some extreme heat index happening during winter, seeing a similar frequency in droughts that you're experiencing now, but they're becoming more severe, having intense extreme precipitation happening on a daily scale as opposed to a multi-day scale, an increase in drier conditions that coincide with high winds, leading to a potential for fire weather risk. And then this last one, which was a reduction in marine stratus, which means a loss of this critical modulation for heat waves and drought. With that, I will end. I want to thank everyone for hanging on with me, listening through all of this. I'm happy to take any questions, comments, feedback. Yeah, thanks again.
That was a great presentation, Coley. Thank you. Maybe this is a little discussion question. We're wondering about the potential increase in wildfires and a corresponding need for more water to fight the fires. Yeah, I think it'd maybe be open to a couple more people.
Yeah, I don't have
yeah.
sorry.
I think
Good question.
I feel like my immediate thoughts are just like the pressure on our water systems might increase. And maybe, I don't know, but maybe our water systems are prepared or not prepared to fight like those types of wildfires. But yeah, if anybody has any comments, feel free to add them. And then Peter, you can ask your question.
I noticed that this was done at a county level and that you had snipped or at least boxed the Ventura River watershed. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is all this information publicly available now? So will all of the gridded, I think you said it was 3 kilometer grids for each climate impact, or I think that's what we call it. That'll all be publicly available. This might be a project management question, but I'm guessing that Eagle Rock is delivering a data package.
Correct. Anna, do you want to talk?
Yeah, I can jump in and say that there will be a web map viewer, which some of you all have had access to through kind of an early preview in our asset manager interviews that we've been going through as we're finalizing our vulnerability scores. But yes, Eagle Rock is providing all of their data that they've done, which is actually a lot more than what Coley just showed. There's a lot more data that they've run in layers that we're collecting into an interactive online GIS web map viewer, which the RCD is hosting. And the intention is to have that be something that's publicly accessible for everyone to access after the project. It's not yet publicly accessible just because it's still an interim working product. But at the end of the project, indeed, that is the intention.
Yeah, I would ask that in addition to a web map viewer, that the raw data is available so that agencies can take it and use it if it's publicly available with our own GIS teams or spatial data teams. So if that's possible, that would be really great. Thanks.
You mean the data layers?
Yeah,
Like
I
the
mean, I just want the whole geodatabase with everything, because I feel like it'd be really useful to have other watershed discussions since it's countywide.
And I'll just add to that, there'll also be a written there'll be a written component of this in the watershed resilience plan that's coming out too. So that would be something that for many people, we hope that is something that they can share and look at and look back on for management decisions as well as the data. And these slides will also be available shortly after this meeting. We'll get them posted, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And Peter too, we'll
recording.
bring back your comment about the data files. That's not something that I think Lynn, Laura, or I can speak directly to, since the client is the RCD in this essence and they own the data, but we'll bring that back to the RCD and push for getting all of those data files publicly
We hear
accessible
you.
alongside the webmap viewer.
Much appreciate, thanks.
Carly?
Thanks. I just had a response to, I think it was Leslie's question about the relationship of fighting fire with water, just to kind of flag that there's beyond water, there's, other ways that we'll be planning to decrease wildfire, like prescribed burns or other various aspects that we can use.
Yeah, definitely. And I can jump in on this one, Coley, around the question around needing more water to fight fires, as well as Carly, your astute point in that water is not the only way to fight fire. Fire is sometimes the best way, oftentimes the best way to fight fire. And these are all components that are being built into the adaptation strategies section of our watershed resilience plan, and will definitely be components that we're discussing, like prescribed fire, Carly, when we're thinking about how do we make these assets less vulnerable to things like wildfire. And then also too, I can add, I forget who it was that asked about the question on the impacts on the water system in fighting wildfire. One of the sections in our watershed resilience plan, like the actual narrative itself, we do discuss historic impacts on systems, our water systems with regards to wildfire. And so we do have some discussion around how, for example, the Tom's fire impacted water supply within the watershed when firefighting efforts were underway.
Great. Thank you. And I believe it's probably Jamie who has the Ventura County RCD hand raised.
Thanks, Lauren. That is me. And I just wanted to respond to Peter's request for the data, which I appreciate that request, Peter. And the reason that I really appreciate that request, especially coming, through the county, is because when we first took on this goal of developing this WRP for Ventura, I pleaded with all of the other watersheds to please be paying attention, because we would be doing a lot of data collection and analysis, and it would be great if other watersheds were able to sort of follow along with the processes and protocols, with the goal of perhaps getting an opportunity to develop a WRP for their watersheds. So yes, I do intend to have this data available, and I hope that there'll be other efforts to take this data, the processes, protocols, and analysis, and actually refine them, make them better, and get a return on investment for all of our watersheds throughout the county. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Lynn, we'll have you be the last person,
Yeah.
because we'll take a break. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. And thank you so much, Coley, for that very thorough and easy to understand walkthrough that you just did. And my question is kind of a little bit related to what Jamie said, and that is, I know that you're helping one of the other pilot regions, watershed resilience pilot regions. And I'm just wondering if the work we're doing through this grant is something that you are seeing happen maybe in other areas. Have you been working on similar kinds of approaches, or does this seem to you to be a relatively new process and toolkit that we're sort of developing for looking ahead to resilience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will say there are more groups and organizations starting to think about this and ask for this kind of information, but because of the wide variety of microclimates that happen in California, things are really specific and tailored to the end user application. So it's really interesting to see what one region is concerned about and what their end users are concerned about, and then tailoring it for that. So there is you're seeing some kind of consistency, but it's not like the same metrics are being developed because they're just not as relevant in certain areas.
Thank you.
Peter, is your comment quick?
Just quick. So I just wanted to note, Sarah's not able to respond. To Leslie's comment, it said, I wonder about the potential increase in wildfires and corresponding need for more water to fight fires. I just want to note that domestic water supplies are not meant to fight wildfires. They're meant to distribute potable water and fire hydrants to fight, single fires in a neighborhood. And so there would never typically be adequate water supply in a domestic system to fight a wildfire that is encroaching on urbanization. So I just want to note that. But thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much for further mentioning and clarifying that. Okay, I think we should take a break and let's reconvene at 10:50. 6 minutes, everyone. Sorry, but I want to get through all the presentations. See you soon.
And I have a question for you.
Who do you have a question for, Lynn?
You.
Oh.
Did you see that we now have a link to the October 23rd virtual meeting that we're having, the joint meeting with the council and the advisory group? And it would be great if we could post that maybe right after the break, if we could put that in the chat and then call people's attention to it, unless it's already been posted.
I think.
Yeah,
we're
you
just
have
asking-
time at the end of the meeting to talk about the next steps, and you can post it in the chat.
Well, I'm just worried that we're gonna lose people before then.
Okay, yeah, post it in the chat. I think that's great.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Lauren, I can stay on too, and if you want me to help make that announcement and connect what we just learned with Eagle Rock to what we're going to be talking about on the session on the 23rd, I can do that too.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I know you sent us the link, so if you want to post it. And,
yeah, happy to.
And just kind of make a quick announcement before we lose people, that'd be great.
Thanks for joining us, Cameron. It is 10:50. So I would like to restart our presentations. Very quickly, if you don't mind, Anna, would you like to just announce our upcoming meeting?
Yes, gladly. So we have our next sort of like a forum. It's not going to be as open to the public, but we are extending the invitation to our entire Watershed Council. So all of you all, as well as our advisory group. So the next forum or special session, if you will, for the Watershed Resilience Pilot Project is going to be happening on the 23rd of this month of October 23rd. I'm dropping the link in the chat right now for the October 23rd special session and encourage you all to register. It is going to be a virtual event in which we're going to be convening and discussing the final vulnerability scores that we've settled on for our assets within the watershed. We're going through a process right now of reviewing and vetting those with asset managers within the watershed. And then we'll be taking those vulnerability scores to essentially develop the next stage of the WRP process, which is, as I mentioned earlier, developing the adaptation strategies and implementation strategies to address the things that are most vulnerable, most risky in our watershed. So essentially, we'll be taking this next step, building up from what Coley just presented on, taking the exposure of our assets to these different hazards, understanding how they are impacted by climate change that Coley was projecting, and then starting to talk about, okay, what are we going to do about this now? So we're finally starting in the project to phase into the solutions part of our discussion. We've been focused for a while now on the problems, and we're very excited to be moving on upwards into the solutions part of the discussion of the whole project process. So anyways, highly encourage you all to join the October 23rd special session. Again, the link is in the chat for you to register. You do have to register in advance. It's a virtual event. It runs from 1 to 4 p.m. And we would really, really love to see you there. It'll be a great opportunity to provide input on how we're going to prioritize the adaptation strategies that we will be putting forward in the WRP plan. So if you want to have a say in what this WRP plan is suggesting we work towards next to make more resilient watershed, really encourage you all to join.
Thank you, Anna, for summarizing that very quickly. Okay, Cameron, thanks for joining us. Please feel free to introduce yourself and start whenever you are ready.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Cameron Yee. I'm with CAUSE, Central Coast Alliance United for a Sustainable Economy. We're a community organization that works in 6 communities in Ventura and Santa Barbara counties, including Santa Paula, Oxnard, West Ventura, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and we just started opened an office in Lompoc. Our key issues that we work on include workers' rights, especially with farm workers, environmental justice and climate resilience, and affordable housing and renters' rights. And I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see. No, do this way. Let's see if I can get the right screen up. Okay. Okay, is that visible now? The slides?
Yeah, that looks great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so CAUSE is working with the project team to essentially do 2 things. One, we developed a community survey to get, because the watershed goes through the west side community, the west side community, the Avenue community. It's considered a disadvantaged community. We want to make sure that community residents were able to give some input into this whole process. So we developed a community survey with the team to implement with the goal of collecting 100 surveys. It was a challenging survey to implement it because we made it open-ended questions. So there are 8 open-ended questions. The two initial questions were focused on perceived positive, negatives about the Avenue community. And then we followed up with 6 specific questions that focused on climate and water challenges in the overall Ventura River watershed. Staff trained 5 of CAUSE Summer Youth Fellows to conduct the survey this summer in, let's see, we did it at the end of July and in August. And staff also went out and collected surveys, and we focused on high volume places like the Red Barn Market, Vaughn's, and we did door-to-door outreach as well. And over half of the 113 surveys that we completed, we collected them in Spanish. And this was an oral survey that took about 10 minutes with our canvassers, youth, and staff, writing down the information on paper. And then, so, oops, why did you go next one? Oh, there we go, okay. So, busy slide. These are the demographics of who completed the survey. Again, majority of the folks that completed it were identified as Latino, Hispanic, slightly more females and males, a good age range. 17 under folks were high school age students. And then is the income slide cut off? Or you don't,
I'm
Yeah, I
muted.
can't see the bottom.
okay, let me see if I can fix that. Why are you not? There we go. Okay.
That looks good.
Okay, now we can see it, right?
Better.
Sorry
Yeah.
about that. And then the majority of folks' income was under less than 50,000. So those are just kind of overview of who completed the survey. So the first 2 questions were open-ended about what people liked about living on the west side and liked about the west side in general, and what they perceived as they didn't like. So the first one, generally, I think this shows that people like doing outdoor activities in the west side. It's an active community. These were the top ones. People like access to the beach. People like the park. Specifically, people mentioned many times, I just brought it out, that Kellogg Park, which is the park that just opened about 10 years ago. They like that it's a walkable community, and they also appreciate that they have a small library in the community. Their concerns were around safety issues. I think that was a variety. Again, it was a rough survey to both code and implement because of the open-ended questions. So I haven't delved into a lot of the safety concerns in more detail, but we will do that. Again, this is the initial analysis. So I think it's interesting because if you add like homeless, rent issues, affordable housing, gentrification, those all could be considered housing issues. So housing is top of mind for folks. If you add all those categories together, and then because of what's been happening in Ventura County and across California, ICE raids and ICE concerns were on people's minds as well, given that the Avenue community has a large Latino population. And then, so next specifically, we asked about climate concerns and climate extreme weather emergencies. And again, it was a range. There wasn't just one thing. I think our folks implementing it, like a lot of people said, we didn't know, we tried to prompt them. So, but these were the top ones that came up. Again, not really unexpected, right? In terms of what we've talked about today, heat waves, wildfires, droughts, flooding, and then obviously emergency response. And that plays up more emergency response in terms of what we'll see later in terms of recommendations that folks had. And then the next question focused on how have people actually experience extreme weather emergencies. And wildfires was selected by almost everyone, and I think that reveals most people, when they mention wildfires, they mention surviving the Thomas Fire. And so a lot of the people we did the survey have been living in the Avenue for a while, because they were all living there during the Thomas Fire, which was almost 10 years ago, right? And so we really got a good sampling of folks who actually live in the community and continue to live there. And then there are flooding and mudslides concerns, but lesser extent. And again, I still have to dig through all the input of the data, and this might change some, but if anything, it will go up in terms of some of these responses. And then we next asked about what people saw as the benefits for people in the community living in the west side, a little different from what they liked about living from the west side. And then we also asked if we thought that the extreme weather issues would make it harder for people to access those benefits on living on the Avenue, and 2/3 of the people surveyed thought that that would be the case. And again, different assets in terms of what people thought that other folks benefited from, including local food pantries, library. Again, parks is very popular, as well as people's access to the beach. This was kind of interesting in terms of what do people do during emergencies, who do they like to go to, and who do they get information from. Generally, they listed, fire and police first, and then churches third. And some people listed social media, and I know that number is going to go up because I had perused through all the data to code it properly. But also, I know anecdotally, when we did a climate resilience forum that over 100 people attended on the west side a couple of years ago, everybody was talking about how during the Thomas Fire, they used social media as their source of information during the Thomas Fire, and they continue to do so. So jives with this a little. It's a little surprising how not as many people selected it or said that as I would have expected. And then finally, we asked future needs in response to emergencies. People said the need for information in Spanish. A lot of people's experience during the Thomas Fire was not being able to evacuate. They just remember the traffic trying to leave in the middle of the night during the Thomas Fire. So clear evacuation plan. People were really concerned about access to drinking water during different climate emergencies. Information in Spanish is interesting in terms of right now the county has a text system for wildfire smoke alerts for outdoor workers that people sign up for, and that is in Spanish, English, and then in several indigenous languages. So there's definitely been response from the county in terms of having different emergency information in numerous languages in terms of indigenous languages, and it seems like folks are really see that as a need. And that is the end of my short presentation. I don't know if there's questions, clarifications.
Lynn, did you happen to have something?
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. And just to provide a little bit more context for the work that Cause is doing and has done in the past with us, similar to that event you mentioned, Cameron, on the Avenue a couple years ago, working on our underserved community engagement grant, also from DWR. The work that you do on the ground, communicating with community members is just extremely valuable. And that's a very important part of this grant, the Watershed Resilience Pilot Project, to continue to improve on how we engage with our communities and make sure that we're meeting the needs of everyone in every community, and not just some communities that have more access to resources. So appreciate that. And then also wanted to ask you to just share real quick what you're going to do next with the focus group meetings.
Yeah, so that was kind of just getting people's reactions to and their perceptions of current climate emergency. So the next step is to take both some of those folks and bring them into a focus group where we actually get input on solutions and adaptation strategies. I believe that's what we decided on as a team. And so we'll be doing that in the next couple of months. So they'll have that opportunity, and we'll conduct one group in focus group in Spanish, and then either do one with youth or English speaking adults. We'll have to decide that. So we look forward to doing that and getting more in depth into the issues, because we definitely know the community from workshops and the survey definitely interested and very aware of these issues.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for your participation in this project.
Yeah. Are there any other comments, questions? Okay. We can now move to our last presentation, the regional network assessment. I'm not sure who will lead the conversation.
That would be me. Thanks, Lauren.
Awesome, thank you.
Hopefully you can see my screen. So good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Cho. I'm a project manager at the Center for Geospatial Science and Technology at CSU Northridge. And I'm also the project manager for the CSU consultant team, which consists of researchers at CSUN, CSU San Bernardino, and LMU. And we've been leading the work on task 3, which is the regional network assessment. Today, we'll be sharing the results of that assessment, but before doing so, I would like to let the lead research team members introduce themselves, starting with Danielle Bram.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Bram, and I'm the director of the Center for Geospatial Science and Technology at CSU Northridge. Happy to be here. I'll popcorn it over to Dr. Alford.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Jennifer Alford. I'm a professor of environmental studies and also the director for the Institute of Watershed Resiliency, and had the pleasure of working with your community on the Water Talks program a couple years ago. So great to see many of you again. Thank you. And now pop it over to Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Romolini. I'm the managing director of the Center for Urban Resilience at Loyola Marymount University. It's great to be here. Excited to present our results.
Thank you. I also want to acknowledge the important contributions of other members of our research team, including Madeline Blua, Nora Carmody, and Roya Shanazarine. I believe all 3 of them are on as well. So before sharing the results, just as a refresher, the goals and objectives of this task are to assess the existing regional network by identifying and developing an inventory of groups that are actively working in the Ventura River watershed, as well as identifying existing relationships among those groups, and then assessing the health of the network as it relates to overall collaboration, as well as engagement with vulnerable and historically excluded communities. To complete this assessment, we relied primarily on a community partner survey that was conducted this past summer to collect data related to the existing watershed network. That survey collected information about organizations that work in the watershed, including where they work and what issues they focus on, how these organizations collaborate with other groups in the watershed, and the survey also collected information about priorities when it comes to issues relating to water and climate resilience. For our assessment, we also relied on data collected from meetings that took place with key partners in the second half of 2024 that also covered many of these same topics. So we've developed a dashboard that summarizes the survey data, and we will be sharing a link to this dashboard after our presentation so that you can explore the results on your own. Overall, 51 organizations completed the survey out of 72 that were invited. This is a response rate of about 70%. And I know many of you on this call completed the survey, so thank you for your participation. There were many different types of organizations that were represented in the survey. So nonprofits and NGOs represented about 1/3 of the participants. followed by local government agencies at about 20%, public utilities at roughly 12%, and state government agencies and community-based organizations at about 10% each. Other survey participants came from academia and research, federal government agencies, and the private sector. The organizations that participated in the survey represent many different sectors. So nearly a quarter of the groups work on water resource issues, 20% work on land management and conservation, and about 12% of the groups each work on community issues, ecosystem or habitat issues, or wildfire issues. And the remaining groups work primarily on agriculture, recreation, energy, municipal issues, and native or tribal issues. In terms of where these groups work, it was fairly evenly divided among three categories: those that work across the entire Ventura River watershed, those that work across multiple watersheds, and then those that work in specific locations, whether that be project-based locations or defined jurisdictional boundaries. And I want to note that as part of this task, we also will be developing and sharing an interactive web map that shows where each of these organizations that completed the survey work. So look for that in the coming months. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Alford, who will be sharing our results related to the watershed resiliency issues that were identified.
Great, thank you, Ben. So in the surveys that we distributed out, we first asked about defining watershed resiliency. And so this is an open-ended question that people could complete. And you're probably familiar with word clouds. So we're looking at frequency of similar terms. And so what rose to the top here, as you can see, those that were the most frequent are going to be larger. So we had healthy communities and sustainability. And one note about sustainability is it was really honing in on supply and quantity of water, or the stability of being able to provide resources. Next slide, please. When we asked if your organization has developed a climate resiliency vision or plan, we had some mixed results here. While we did have some municipal groups, nonprofits, and some in the water sector that have defined plans, we also found that a lot of organizations latch on, if you will, or they try to blend in with larger planning efforts that are going on. So this could be at the regional or state scale. So they're basically adopting or linking into those established frameworks for their work. We also teased out several respondents who noted that they were interested in doing plans, but they were not really sure how to start or how to approach it. And that leads to a lot of network strengthening opportunities that we'll talk about later. Thank you. Next slide. When we asked what are the most urgent climate hazards affecting water resources specifically, respondents were able to select up to 3 of these options. You'll see here that the increased frequency, intensity, and drought, and the duration as well, rose to the top, no matter what respondent types we had or organizations they were representing. Frequent and intense wildfires ranked second, and then precipitation extremes and flooding. So you can see that these are all interconnected as far as the types of impacts we're thinking about in water resources. When we ask the most urgent challenges facing the watershed in terms of water and climate resiliency, you'll see here that a lot of the organizations, again, were thinking about water in the sense of depletion, so that can be related to drought. Also, the impacts to loss of biodiversity, habitat degradation, flooding and erosion, and then also just the impacts collectively to those water degradation, and then the wildfire impacts. And as you guys know, those can be interconnected with those water resource impacts as well. Approaches or strategies adopted by organizations to support climate adaptation and resiliency across the watershed. Community engagement and education was vital to these roles and to approaches to addressing climate resiliency. We also found that nature-based solutions were highly ranked, so anything from restoration to enhancement of impacted areas. And then economic funding strategies for resiliency projects was also one that was ranked in the top. And this will probably be no surprise to everyone on the call here, but when we were really thinking about, approaches and strategies of prioritizing and what was needed to support climate adaptation is the funding. So funding our financial resources. And then we also found that difficulty engaging or coordinating with partners and communities and regulatory policy changes or shifts were all considerations that were selected. And with that, I will pass it over to Michelle for the network analysis. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Jen. So my role in all of this was to look at the social networks that were described by respondents. And we had really two questions to look at. One was just who do you work with? And so I wanted to give just a snapshot of what the survey outputs were for that. So as Ben mentioned, we had 51 survey respondents. And we provided, as you know, if you took the survey, there was a list of 74 organizations that were preceded, that were identified by you all as potential collaborators. And so those were already available to choose from, or respondents could list additional organizations that were not on that list. So of the 51 survey respondents, they named an additional 63 organizations that they worked with. So in total, there were 114 organizations in the network that I'm going to describe now. And so you can see on the right what that looks like. I like to just kind of include, this is your network, and it's pretty impressive. But that is all relationships, all organizations in that visual. So then the next question was, how do you actually work with those organizations? And they could choose the ways they collaborate with each organization. So yeah, next slide, please, Ben. So there were 3 different ways that we offered to choose from. So how do you collaborate could be routine collaboration on watershed related projects or programs, could be knowledge, data, or expertise on watershed related issues, and then funding, materials, work share, or work trade. So we have collaboration, information, and funding. And groups could choose one or any combination of all 3 of the ways that they're collaborating. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to give a little primer on social network analysis, because I imagine you all didn't spend many years of your life studying it like I did. So there are 2 metrics I'm going to talk about high level today. One is degree centrality, and that's really just how many connections does an organization have. So you can see there's this very simplified network here. If we're talking about organization B has a degree of 4 because it is connected with A, C, and D, and it has both an incoming and an outgoing relationship with C. The number of connections that an organization has can indicate that they are hubs for diffusing information. But if there's a whole lot of relationships, if they have a lot of ties, those are not always as strong because they have so many relationships. Sometimes those can be a little bit diluted. And then there's out degree. Out degree is just that the organization named another organization. So those are relationships that go out from the organization. So when we talk about out degree, those groups can spark the flow of information, but they may not be the most efficient at spreading it. And in this case, B has an out degree of 1 to C. And then with in degree, those are the organizations that were named by others as connections. And so those are often considered the leaders, the groups that are looked to by others. So in this case, B has a high in degree. It has an in degree of 3. So all 3 organizations in this network named B. Okay, so there we go with degree. The next slide will show some of what we found in this network. So very selected degree results. The report will have a lot more, but this shows the in degree network for information. So that light bulb in the corner, the size of each node is related to the number of in-degree ties they have for information. So total in this network of information, we have 1,104 total information ties, so incoming or outgoing. But if you see over here in the top right, there's 6 organizations that had 0 information ties. I'll note they were not survey respondents, but nobody actually named them as information partners. And then another 6 organizations, so 5%, just 5% of the whole network, actually hold 21%, so about a fifth of the information ties. So those groups, there's a lot of information centralized in those 6 groups. And you can see the 6 top in-degree groups listed there. Okay, so next slide, we will talk about betweenness. So betweenness is another metric that we use, and it describes the number of times an organization is between 2 others that don't have their own connection. So we consider this, so in this case, B is between A and D and A and C. So if B was to be removed from the network, say, the organization closed, A, C, and D, only C and D have a relationship. A and C would not have a relationship, and A and D. So that's considered like a bridging or brokering relationship, and it's a measure of influence. Yeah, next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to list, this is for the collaboration network, what it looks like for in-degree, which again is that sort of measure of leadership, versus betweenness, which is that measure of influence. So the top groups are similar, but not exactly the same. So the groups that are in black were named both in sort of the top tier of in-degree and the top for betweenness. And you can see that it's several of the similar organizations, but that their kind of positionality changes when you look between leadership and influence. So 2 that we'll be talking about today in more depth are the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, which you can see is 4th on in-degree, but then rises to 1st for betweenness. And the Surfrider Foundation, which I think is 7th in degree, and then rises to 3rd for betweenness. So this is a way to think about, like, what ways do we want to get information out, right? Who are the leaders and who are those that are maybe more influential in sharing policy or something where influence is really important. Okay, next slide, please, Ben. And then I just have a few other notable results that we'll talk more about in the report, but 2 groups ranked among the top in-degree and betweenness for all 3 relationship types, so information, funding, and collaboration, and those were Ojai Valley Land Conservancy and Ventura Resource Conservation District. We also found that betweenness was highest in the information network, so that indicates that more organizations are playing that sort of bridging role in information sharing. And I also just wanted to note, in thinking about groups that maybe aren't as integrated into the network, there were 11 organizations that only held 1 tie, whether it was funding, collaboration, or information, just one incoming or 1 outgoing tie. And that was including 1 responding organization, the Westside Community Council. So there's an opportunity to really bring these organizations more into the fold. And so the next slide. So what we did with all of this information, one of our deliverables was to produce an interactive mapping tool. And Ben, do you want me to share my screen for this?
Great. Yes, if you don't mind.
Awesome. Yeah, I have it open. That's not it. There we go. Okay. So we put, and thank you, Roya, who's on the call, for putting this together. So we put all of the data into a mapping tool called Kumu, and you can see the ways that this is visualized. So this is the entire network. The sizes again are in degree, but it's for all relationship types. So the groups that were named most frequently by others are the ones with the largest node sizes, and then the legend here. The shapes of each node are related to their focus areas, as was described earlier. So the way that this map can be used, you can, first of all, if you want, we can filter by survey respondent. So those will be all the groups that more information is available for. So if you click on Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, their mission comes up, the coalitions that they identified being part of, and then all of their collaboration partners that they listed in the survey.
Michelle, I think you're on the slide, not the Kumu map.
Oh. Am I not? Hold on, sorry about that. Thanks for telling me. I guess I was looking at practicing my slides first. There we go. Okay, can you see that?
It still looks like the slides.
Is that changing?
No.
No? Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, so it looks like this. It looked like that too, but that was a static version. So same thing, the legend shows the focus area types, and then the size, so that's the shapes of the nodes, and the sizes are related to how many identified that group. So if you hover over any one, it kind of shows the network specific to that organization. You can filter out for who actually responded. And in this case, I clicked on Ojai Valley Land Conservancy, and we can see the mission, the coalitions that were listed, the collaboration partners, the focus area, and the organization type. So each one of these, when you filter by survey respondent, shows information. Any information that we've included here was on the survey. There's also the ability to search. So if you search for, Ventura water, say, then it zooms into that group. It shows you their response information. And again, if you hover over, you can see their network. If you click on lines between organizations, you can see the relationship type. So here, Casitas Municipal Water District and the Ventura Chamber of Commerce have one connection type, the knowledge relationship. So there's a lot you can do as a user. There's also down below are metrics that you could run. You can get a table of all of the back end of the data. There's the ability to share and lots more. But I know I don't have a whole lot of time, but that's just kind of the quick tour through what this tool can do. And we'll share the link after the presentation. But I'll stop sharing so we can get to our next. And sorry about that technical error.
That's great. Thank you so much. So what we're able to do with that and how this can really inform the group's work moving forward is that we're able to identify those leaders, but also identify those people that can be connectors. And that's really important to a lot of the responses we were hearing, particularly when you have groups that want to be, want to strengthen their network. They're looking for expertise, things of that nature, but they're not really sure where to start. So this can really help to, utilizing the tool, start to kind of filter out and more refine what those connections could be. And so, as Michelle mentioned, we have the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy. So, they're both a leader, but they're also a connector. And so again, because of the breadth of their work and the spectrum in which they work on, that also lends for their placement in that network. The other one was a Surfrider Foundation, very oceanic oriented in nature, but also that connects to the watershed because of that coastal inland connection there. And they have a lot of different programs as well, so that better positions them to be that connector. Next slide, please. And there's a lot of opportunities that came out. We're just highlighting two here. But as I mentioned previously, we do have cases where organizations know they need help, they need assistance, and they need guidance from people that have a lot of experience in a particular topics. So as I mentioned before, it could be the planning process, learning about what that might look like, helping to frame it and model it after other things that are going on in the watershed. It could be just the fact that engagement's not a strength of, the organization. It might not be a primary focus. It could be the case where that's a capacity issue with staffing. And so connecting them with other organizations that already have that network in there, or they have those type of programmatic expertise can help to strengthen the network as well. And she mentioned the West Side Community Council partnership. This is one that has expressed a desire. So really teasing out that people want to do this and that they're looking to evolve their work helps to better position them with a group, for example, like Cause, who just presented, and they have a very extensive outreach network as well. So there's ways, these are just a couple of examples, but what we'll have in the report is ways in which you could facilitate those connections and then strengthening network, but also the opportunities that arise when it comes to things like funding and regulatory strategies as well. Next slide, thank you. So we would love to see you all on December 4th. We're going to have a workshop. This is in person. We really want to make this interactive, so you'll have the opportunity to do a deeper dive into the methodology that we did, how that can apply to your individual organization, but also your role within the watershed and the network. We are going to be demonstrating the survey network and mapping tools, so you'll be able to actually click on it, interact with it, and we feel like that's going to be really helpful for you to feel comfortable with these tools, to talk about really what that means for your organization and coalitions that are working within the watershed. We're also going to discuss what those applications could be. How do we use these tools as knowledge, disseminate it all together to really inform the coalition and partnership collaborations? And then we're going to have a time for engaged discussion. We really want to tease out those network gaps that we've been talking about and to help serve as the baseline to formulate recommendations moving forward. And we can take any questions that you have. And thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing so many of you in December 4th, as Lynn put in the chat. That's a really great time for us to get in the same space and really be thinking about the implementation of this. Thank you. Yes, Lynn.
All right, well, I want to special thanks to your team for all this work that you're doing. It's really great to see the outcome of the survey and the results and the many ways we can take advantage of this information and use it going forward. And also just wanted to emphasize that this was one of the things the state really wanted us to do. I mean, it's a good idea to do it, but it was high on their list for us to look at our, existing relationships and networks within the watershed, which already I would say was a very strong watershed in that sense. There are some strong connections existing, but also to identify where we can, as Jen said, fill the gaps. And so thank you to the team and to all of you that completed the survey. I know it wasn't a short survey, but it's great to see, the outcome and the results. And we did decide to make this meeting in person on December 4th, which is when normally we would have a Watershed Council meeting, because of the relationship building opportunity that I mentioned in the chat. So really excited to see you. And I think that some or most of the team on the call today from CSU and LMU will be actually at the meeting in person, so you'll be able to meet them there. I don't think we're really giving an opportunity for in-person engagement, although I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, it would be great to have everyone in the same space. A lot of great conversations happen, and we think it's really important to interact with the tools. Sometimes what we might think is intuitive, and they're typically, great, pretty much, straightforward. But I really think us sitting there clicking through with you guys would really help to, build the comfort level, and then also something that we, think will strengthen you guys actually utilizing those tools and have longevity with it. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm gonna try and look for the link to RSVP for that meeting to put it in the chat. My computer's just going a little slow, so that'll come in just a moment. Yeah, if there's any other questions or comments about this, please feel free to add them. And if not, Lynn, Laura, do you have any closing remarks, or we can leave this time open for anyone to chime in and have more open discussions?
Hi, my name is Yvonne, and I just want to thank you guys for your presentation and all the presentations we've had today. It's just been a really packed watershed council meeting, so pretty awesome. The only question that I had about your guys's like mapping project is actually kind of, is there a spatial, like, is there an opportunity for there to be a spatial component to this? Just considering the fact that, like, for the Ventura River watershed, we definitely work, we're a very small watershed, but even so, I think there's a lot of things that are done in the upper watershed versus the lower watershed, but also opportunities for us to connect that way. Connecting with people who are outside of the watershed. I just feel like that could be an interesting thing to include, but maybe isn't within the scope of what y'all are doing.
Thanks, Yvonne. So we did develop a web map that shows where all the different organizations are working. We didn't share it today because we didn't want to overwhelm everyone, but that will be available. We'll share that ahead of the December 4th workshop.
And maybe you could explain just a little bit about in the written plan or the plan that's available online when we're done, the elements that you'll be including in that document, story maps and the narrative that you'll be providing.
Yeah, so as part of that regional network assessment analysis, so we will be producing a PDF report that will be on the shorter side with some more extensive appendices that go into our survey methodology, a deeper dive into the survey results. So more in depth compared to what we were able to present today related to the issues that were identified related to climate and water resiliency, and then a lot more detail regarding the social network analysis. And then we will have a companion story map that will have links to a lot of the interactive components that we talked about. So the survey dashboard, the interactive web map, the Kumu map that Michelle showed. So our intent is to have those pieces be complementary to each other.
Thank you, Ben. Looks like Peter, you have your hand up?
Bruce was first, so go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think one of Jennifer's slides struck me as being very surprising. It showed that groundwater depletion was the highest rank of the concerns. And I wondered what groundwater depletion meant. Was that a volumetric, or was that the relationship with interference with possibly the surface flow? Because the two groundwater basins in the watershed, there's no threat at all for groundwater depletion. Both the basins have groundwater sustainability plans that are in balance, and I don't understand that. It shows that, if anything, it shows a lack of information getting out about the status of our water supplies in the watershed.
Yes, and that could be the case when we were designing this. Lynn, Laura, and Jamie had, we were all kind of working together to think about what might be the selective topics there. But it could definitely warrant additional follow-up questions, and that's a really good point. I know a lot around water in general is the lack of comprehensive education about how water is connected from surface, to ground, and all of these types of elements. So, yeah, for us on the survey side, it's a selective process. So there's no way on the back end at this level to know what the train of thought might be, but it definitely lends itself to reaching out to those respondents and just learning a little bit more about why that was selected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is it my turn?
Go for it.
I really liked this last presentation. It made me think, though, do we have the right people in the room? So, like, I feel like a PIO should be looped in. I know that a lot of larger agencies or mid-sized agencies will have a specific communications team or a PIO to help facilitate the movement and intake of information from an agency or a group. But a lot of the smaller organizations, NGOs, you wear a lot of different hats. Like, do you want PIOs at the December 4th meeting so that they understand that maybe to message better, they need to get engaged more with certain groups? Does that make sense? Because like for me, like I work in public works, right? But if the city of Ventura always wants to try to be involved in like leadership or influence, and so we would really like, and I think benefit if we had someone from our PIO team more involved or engaged, potentially an understanding where there might be a breakdown in information sharing. Does that make sense? Sorry if I'm repeating myself a bit, but.
I think that's a great comment. Actually, a lot of organizations have so many different layers and everybody doesn't know always know all the things that are going on. And so that is probably incumbent on us, maybe at the now and at the end of the grant, to make sure that we're reaching out to more entities and maybe doing a roadshow a little bit about the results of this study. So I think that's a great thing to put on our to-do list.
And
great.
And I would just say I'd suggest that everyone on this call think about at that meeting who would be the best to bring with them to that meeting. I do think that this is focused also, remember, on like collaboration, and of course communication and sharing information, but it's not just like an outreach of information. Like the network is two ways, it's more collaborative, more partnership based. So it might be multiple levels of depending on how big your organization is and how many different people you have that work on those types of relationship building and collaborative efforts. So.
All right, I think on behalf of VCRCD, I think that we had a bit technical difficulty and our coordinator lost access, but I believe that she's either rejoining or did rejoin. And so that
I'm
would be
back, but I missed the conversation.
Yeah, okay. Welcome back, Lauren. And I just wanted to make a few quick comments. Thank you so much for all the questions. Really appreciate that. One of the things that I wanted to ask Ben with respect to Vivon's question regarding the spatial mapping, could you just provide an update real quickly about the level of interaction with those organizations who sent in some spatial mapping element, and whether or not we need more sent so that we'd be able to do a good job of mapping all those entities? Now that people have seen sort of the result of what those questions were and what the outcomes and outputs were expected to be, there might be a bit more engagement since people can see the result of all of those questions.
Thanks for that question, Jamie. So we were able to compile geospatial data for all of the organizations that completed the survey, but I think that tool is sort of a living product. So when we share that out, if your groups don't think it's accurate in terms of representing where you work, feel free to reach out to us and we can always modify the areas that are shown on that map.
Great, thank you, Ben. And to Bruce's question, I really appreciate you looking at these slides critically and seeing what pops out. This is one of the reasons why we have all of these meetings and we provide all these visuals, is to make sure that people are engaged and have opportunities to point to things that we should pay a bit more attention to. And I think that this, of course, is a networking and sort of community interaction presentation. All of those slides were based off of, or were really based towards that as an outcome. And I'm not sure that we're going to see groundwater issues rise to the top of our prioritization with respect to the asset management component of this overall project. But it'll be interesting to see that. And then I wanted to commend Peter again for his question regarding who should be at these meetings. Again, that's a great question, because the overall goal that we have with this component is to strengthen the network and to bring those who aren't at the table to the table at the appropriate time. And so, yes, that would be excellent for us to be thinking about who else should be more appropriately engaged at different phases of this process. So again, thank you for bringing that point up. There's roles for different organizations and different members of those organizations at different times. And I'll be quiet now. And pass it back to Lauren.
Yeah, I was like, thank you, Jamie, for it's just like stepping in to touch base with everyone. Don't know what happened, guys, but I got completely kicked out of this meeting. But yeah, if there's any other comments, questions, I can leave the meeting open for a while. But my, final reminders will be that our upcoming meetings October 23rd and December 4th. Great. Well, thank you all for joining. Those were all really informative and great presentations.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. See you in a few weeks.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Any last minute thoughts, Lynn? Anything you don't want to discuss as people trickle out?
No, I mean, this was great.
Cool.
I think these follow-up emails that go out with, encouraging people, especially people on the list that didn't attend the meeting, to look at the PowerPoints and to review the video or the recording.
Great.
Yeah, it was a very information rich, so people have a lot to process.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I'll compile everything and send it all out, but I can end the meeting now if no one wants to chime in. Bye, Lynn.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone.
Everyone.